Triads on adjacent string sets can be as simple as open chords, and very much like we approach the four-note groupings for seventh chord types, we can start with something very familiar that's an open chord and translate that up the neck, or transpose it up the neck. So whenever we see chord shapes like the D chord, that's just a triad with the fifth, the root, and the third. These are major triads, so we'll start with those. So fifth, root, third. As we go up the next stop is in fifth position for root, third, and fifth. This is again a D triad, D major triad. And then when we go to the next stop, 11th fret and 10th fret, and we have third, fifth, and root on top. So those are all based from a D shape. If we were to take that shape and move this F sharp down an octave, it lands right there on the fourth string, and so we can reconfigure fingering those three. Now we have third, fifth, root. The next inversion of this, or triad we started with on the first three strings, if we move this note down an octave, it lands on the fourth string, so we have this fingering. You can also finger it with any finger. And the configuration here is fifth, root, third. When we take this triad from the first three strings, transpose that D down an octave, it lands right there. And we have root, third, fifth. So, D major, D major, D major, D major, D major, and D major. We might think of those 4-3-2 chords as being based on, this chord is essentially a C shape that's been moved up the neck. That is the same shape as C. If this were the nut of my guitar, these three fingers would be configuring a C shape. So the upper three notes of those four notes give us that shape that we're now calling a first inversion D, which is F sharp, A, and D. This chord looks like an A shape, just moved up the neck, and that's exactly what it is. This chord is part of our 6-string bar chord that we're familiar with. So again, all of these chords come from something else that's probably already familiar. If I take this D triad, lower the F sharp, we wound up here. If I take this D and lower it by one octave, now I'm here. So we can continue to move down across the strings. So now I'm on 5th string, 4th string, 3rd string. This D triad that started here, we move the A down. Now we can move this F sharp down. This D that started here, we move the D down an octave. Now we can move the A down an octave. So that works very well. You can take those triads that are major and find the third and lower it. You have a simple minor triad, and several of these you'll know already. D major, D minor, D major, D minor, D major, D minor. I had D here, lower the third, minor, lower the third, and then we went here, lower the third, and this one, D major, D minor, D major, D minor, D major, D minor. Very easy to do. You can also take a major triad, lower the root by a whole step, and you've created the upper structure of a dominant 7 with the same root. This is D. I lower the D note by a whole step. Now, this structure no longer contains the note D. It's actually a diminished triad, but it's also the upper three notes of D7. That should be a familiar shape. If I take this shape, lower the D by a whole step. This is D. And I think you can see that that's the upper part of a D7 bar chord. When I take this structure, I lower the D on the high E string. And again, those are diminished triads that we're creating. And if you want to think of them as diminished triads, that's okay, but I think in the context of D, it's better to just consider them to be D7 chords. So that's another easy thing you can do with these. If I take this structure of D, the D is here, so I lower it by a whole step. That becomes D7. Here's my D triad here. I lower the D on the G string, and I have that. Here's my D triad in this position. Now it's D7, and so on. So you can take that very simple concept and get a lot of mileage out of it. And they're shapes that are simple to see on the fretboard. Now when we get into bending strings, we can consider those triad shapes as targets for our bends. And by that I mean, let's take the key of A. Here's an A triad. This third of the chord here that's on the G string, I could actually approach that note by bending the note 2 frets below. Now that requires a changed fingering. I'm going to catch these two notes with these two fingers, and I can bend here. I don't practice this enough, which is why I tend to bend things out of tune until I can make adjustments. You can take part of that 3-note structure, maybe turn it into just the third and the root. Now since that A chord lives here, I could bend this A up from a whole step below. So I'm giving implying a G7, an A7 chord. So I've got A triad. At that point it becomes A7. I can lower that G to an F sharp. Now it's like a 6. So, and then the next one is up here. Here's my A triad. I can bend the third, this note, from 2 frets below. Now, I probably will have to give up this note because there's really no way to finger that. If I try to pull this note toward the floor, it will fall off the fretboard. There's that A. So you can see that you can connect those bends So what you'll see players do a lot of times is moving from one spot that's an A triad to another spot that's an A triad, and it sort of creates the illusion that there's motion, harmonic motion, when there really is none.